ticking time bomb sits in your glove box. While gun owners debated red flag laws, argued over background checks, and celebrated constitutional carry wins, a silent revolution swept through state legislatures. New vehicle carry regulations, buried in omnibus bills and administrative updates, are now active in dozens of states. And if you're carrying the same way you did last year, you could be breaking the law right now without even knowing it. This isn't theoretical. Permits are being suspended. Good people with clean records are facing criminal charges. And in the worst cases, lawful gun owners are being treated like criminals during routine traffic stops, all because the rules changed and nobody told them. The question isn't whether you're a responsible gun owner. The question is whether you know the new legal minefield that's been planted in your vehicle. Because in 2025, where your firearm sits, how it's stored, and what you say during a traffic stop could be the difference between driving home safely and losing your Second Amendment rights forever. In this episode of 2A Updates, we're breaking down the major changes to vehicle carry laws that are catching gun owners off guard, the specific mistakes that are costing people their permits right now, and what you must do today to protect yourself from this enforcement wave. Now let's dive into what every gun owner needs to know before they get behind the wheel. In early 2024, something remarkable happened across state capitals. While media attention focused on high-profile gun legislation, state regulatory agencies quietly updated their vehicle carry enforcement guidelines. These weren't new laws requiring legislative votes. They were administrative rule changes, attorney general opinions, and updated law enforcement training protocols. The result? The legal ground shifted beneath gun owners' feet without a single headline. Here's what changed. Multiple states redefined what readily accessible means in vehicle carry statutes. Permit reciprocity agreements added new vehicle-specific restrictions that void out-of-state permits. Law enforcement agencies received updated guidance on when to conduct vehicle searches during traffic stops involving firearms. And permit-issuing authorities established new grounds for suspension based solely on vehicle carry violations. The most dangerous part? These changes happen through bureaucratic processes that don't require public notice or comment periods. One day you're legal, the next day you're not. And you won't find out until you're staring at a revocation notice or sitting in handcuffs on the roadside. Let's talk about the phrase that's costing gun owners their permits: readily accessible. For years, this meant your firearm could be within reach, able to be grabbed quickly in an emergency. That's the whole point of carrying in your vehicle, right? Self-defense requires access. But in 2025, states are flipping this definition on its head. Now, readily accessible is being used as a restriction, not a right. If your firearm is too easy to reach, you're violating the law. Here's how it's playing out. In several states, if your firearm is in the center console and you're pulled over, officers are citing you for improper storage because the weapon is readily accessible during the stop. In other jurisdictions, having a firearm in a door pocket or under your seat now requires it to be in a locked container, not just concealed from view. And some states are arguing that unless your firearm is physically on your person in a holster, it cannot be loaded in the vehicle at all. This creates an impossible standard. Your firearm needs to be accessible enough to use in an emergency, but not so accessible that it violates these new interpretations. And here's the kicker. The definition changes depending on which officer stops you and which prosecutor reviews your case. Gun owners in Florida, Ohio, and Michigan have already lost their permits under these new interpretations. The firearms were legally purchased, the permits were valid, and the owners thought they were following the law. They were wrong, and it cost them everything. The second major shift involves loaded firearms in vehicles. This has always been state-specific, but 2025 has brought a wave of new enforcement that's catching even experienced gun owners by surprise. Here's the new landscape. States that previously allowed loaded vehicle carry with a permit are now requiring the firearm to be on your person, not just in the vehicle. States with unloaded transport requirements are expanding those rules to include permit holders, not just non-permit carriers. And penalties for violations have jumped from misdemeanors to felonies in several jurisdictions, with automatic permit revocation attached. Why the sudden crackdown? Law enforcement unions lobbied hard for these changes, citing officer safety concerns during traffic stops. And gun legislators seized the opportunity to add restrictions without touching the core concealed carry framework. And permit-issuing authorities were given broad discretion to suspend permits for any vehicle carry violation, even without criminal charges. The result is a perfect storm of enforcement. You might not be arrested, but your permit gets flagged for administrative review. By the time you're notified, it's already suspended. And in most states, the burden is on you to prove you should get it back. not on the state to prove you did something wrong. This is happening right now in California, New York, Illinois, and Oregon. But it's spreading fast. Now let's talk about what happens when you're pulled over with a firearm in your vehicle. This is where theory crashes into reality, and where the new regulations are creating dangerous, confusing encounters. The old advice was simple: hands on the wheel, inform the officer immediately, follow instructions. But with these new laws, that approach can backfire. Here's the dilemma gun owners now face. If you inform the officer you're armed and the firearm isn't on your person, you may have just admitted to a storage violation under the new readily accessible standards. If you don't inform and the officer discovers the firearm, you could be charged with failure to disclose in states with duty to inform laws. If the firearm is loaded and in a compartment, you're potentially violating new transport regulations even if you have a permit. And if you reach to retrieve your license or registration near where your firearm is stored, you're creating a threat perception that could escalate dangerously. Officers are also in a tough spot. They're receiving updated training that treats vehicle firearms as higher-risk situations. They're being told to secure weapons during stops, which means asking you to exit the vehicle and submit to a search. And they have new discretion to report vehicle carry violations to permit authorities, even if they don't file charges. The combination is explosive. More stops are escalating. More permits are being flagged. And more gun owners are finding themselves in legal jeopardy for doing what they've done safely for years. If you travel across state lines with a firearm, everything just got exponentially more complicated. Reciprocity agreements are breaking down, federal protections are under attack, and the risk of arrest in hostile states has never been higher. Federal law supposedly protects interstate travelers through the Firearms Owners Protection Act. The safe passage provision says that if you're traveling between two places where you can legally possess your firearm, and the weapon is unloaded and locked away, you're protected from prosecution in states you pass through. But here's the reality in 2025. States like New York and New Jersey are ignoring that federal protection and arresting gun owners anyway. Court cases are pending, but in the meantime, you're the one sitting in jail. New interpretations of locked container mean your glove box doesn't count, your center console doesn't count, and even a cable lock might not be enough. And if you stop for gas, food, or a hotel, prosecutors argue you've abandoned your safe passage protection. Add in the new vehicle carry restrictions, and interstate travel becomes a legal minefield. Your permit might be valid in 5 states but void in the 6th because of vehicle-specific exceptions. Your storage method might be legal in your home state but criminal in the state you're driving through. And you won't know you violated the law until you see the blue lights in your mirror. So why is this happening? Why the sudden coordinated push to restrict vehicle carry when gun rights are supposedly expanding in other areas? The answer is strategic. Anti-gun organizations realized they couldn't ban guns outright, so they're targeting how and where you can carry them. Vehicles became the perfect pressure point because they involve public spaces, other motorists, and law enforcement interactions. By restricting vehicle carry, they limit your ability to transport firearms to ranges, hunting areas, and between properties. They create more opportunities for violations, which lead to permit revocations. And they make gun ownership more burdensome, which discourages new people from exercising their rights. Law enforcement support made it politically viable. Police unions argue that vehicle firearms create dangerous traffic stop situations, and legislators listened. Administrative agencies got expanded authority to interpret and enforce these rules without legislative oversight. And courts have been slow to strike down these restrictions, giving states room to experiment with more aggressive enforcement. The result is a backdoor assault on the Second Amendment. They're not taking your guns. They're making it nearly impossible to legally carry them anywhere outside your home. So with all these changes, what should you do? Here's your survival guide for vehicle carry in 2025. First, audit your current setup immediately. Where is your firearm when you're driving? Is it loaded or unloaded? Is it in a locked container? Is it on your person or in a compartment? Check your state's current laws, not what they were last year. If you're not certain, assume you're wrong and fix it. Second, invest in proper storage solutions. Get a quality lockbox that mounts securely in your vehicle. Keep it in the trunk if possible, not the passenger compartment. Store ammunition separately if your state requires it. Make compliance visible and obvious so there's no room for interpretation. Third, know your state's duty to inform requirements and practice what you'll say. Keep it brief, calm, and factual. Officer, I'm required to inform you that I have a valid concealed carry permit and there is a secured firearm in the trunk. Don't volunteer extra information. Don't reach for anything without being told. Fourth, if you travel, research every state on your route. Check current reciprocity agreements, not outdated lists. Verify vehicle-specific restrictions. Plan your stops carefully. And consider whether the risk is worth it or if alternative arrangements make more sense. Fifth, document everything if something goes wrong. Get names, badge numbers, and incident reports. Don't argue at the scene. Contact an attorney before making any statements to permit authorities. Your permit can be saved if you respond correctly and quickly. Let's step back and look at what this means for your constitutional rights. The Second Amendment guarantees your right to keep and bear arms. But if you can't legally transport them in your vehicle, that right becomes meaningless. Gun rights organizations are filing challenges to these new restrictions. They're arguing that vehicle carry is essential to the Second Amendment because it's how you transport firearms for lawful purposes. They're citing recent Supreme Court decisions that expand Second Amendment protections beyond the home. And they're pushing back on administrative rule changes that bypass the legislative process. But litigation takes time. Years, in fact. And in the meantime, gun owners are living under these restrictions and facing enforcement actions. The outcome of these legal battles will define gun rights for the next generation. If courts allow states to regulate vehicle carry into oblivion, it sets a precedent for restricting carry everywhere. If courts strike down these restrictions, it reaffirms that the Second Amendment protects your right to travel armed. This is the front line of the Second Amendment fight. And every gun owner has a stake in how it plays out. You might be thinking, I don't carry in my vehicle that often, so this doesn't really affect me. But that's exactly the kind of thinking that allows these restrictions to spread. Today, it's vehicle carry. Tomorrow, it's public carry. Next year, it's home storage requirements. Each restriction builds on the last. Each enforcement action sets a precedent. And each time gun owners fail to push back, the window of legal gun ownership closes a little more. This affects everyone because it changes how we think about gun rights. Instead of starting from a position of constitutional freedom, we're operating in a framework of government permission. Instead of you can carry unless specifically prohibited, it's becoming you can't carry unless specifically allowed. That's a fundamental shift, and it's happening in your vehicle right now. If we don't draw the line here, there won't be anywhere left to draw it. This ruling may not be trending on cable news, but it should be. Because whether you carry daily or occasionally, whether you're a permit holder or a constitutional carry advocate, these changes affect your rights, your freedom, and your safety. The message is clear. Vehicle carry is under attack, enforcement is ramping up, and gun owners must adapt or face serious consequences. So here's what I want you to do. Share this video with every gun owner in your network. They need to know what's coming before they lose their permits. Drop a comment below. What state are you in? Have you seen these enforcement actions yet? Your experience helps others stay informed. And most importantly, subscribe to 2A updates for regular coverage of the legal battles affecting your Second Amendment rights. Stay sharp, stay legal, and stay free. We'll see you in the next one.